Get free tech advice for your business from O2 Gurus. Search O2 Business for more. Hey guys, welcome to BTech. It's Basil here with the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. The Samsung Galaxy Note 4 is part of the Galaxy Note range, the seminal phablet range. This thing is a spec sheet leader. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 805 processor, 3 GB of RAM, 2.7 GHz clock speed. This pen, 2048 levels of pressure sensitivity. It's also got a metal frame, adding a real nice rich factor to the Samsung Galaxy Note range, something that we have grumped about in the past, having a very plasticky feel in the hand. This is all looking very good on paper. We've already done a 4K video with it uploaded, showing you the nighttime capabilities of the 16 megapixel camera, and we've also unboxed it and set the whole thing up. One thing we haven't done is compare it against the competition, and we're going to start with the Huawei Ascend Mate 7. The Ascend Mate 7 was also announced at IFA 2014, a 6-inch display, 83% screen to bezel ratio, all metal body, feels very nice and rich, one of the best devices that we have ever seen from Huawei. Indeed, one of the best devices out there for a lot of reasons. How does it stack up against the Note 4? Well, we're going to start off by talking about the design, and you can very clearly see these are two phablets, big phones. If we stack the Note 4 against the Ascend Mate 7, you can see the Note 4 is a little bit shorter, it's a little bit narrower too, but it is also packing a smaller display, 5.7 inches versus 6 inches. Huawei's become a master at reducing bezels, and while you still have black bordering on the screen, it isn't massive at all. What we can safely say is that both feel very premium in the hand. The Note 4 feels a lot softer. That plastic backing doesn't feel quite as stark as the metal backing on the Ascend Mate 7. The flat sides of both mean they're very easy to pick up, although the painted almost sides of the Note 4 mean that they have a little bit more grip than those of the Ascend Mate 7. Any sweat in the hand and these things are going to be slipping out of your hands, well, the Huawei Ascend Mate 7 at the very least. If we take a look around each individually, we can see the Samsung Galaxy Note 4's got that 5-inch display, front-facing camera, capacitive button, and surrounding that is a fingerprint scanner for a sliding fingerprint input. You've also got capacitive buttons either side, one multitasking and one back button. On the right-hand side, you've got a power button. It's also worth noting these chamfered metal edges look very rich, and they pose a nice contrast against the matte white finish that's been brushed on. We're not totally convinced about durability. When this scratches, it might scratch through silver, but we don't want to scratch it to test that theory out. Down at the base, you've got that S Pen. The S Pen supports input of 2048 levels of pressure sensitivity, by contrast to the 1024 in its predecessor. You have a micro USB connector, but it isn't a micro USB 3, sadly for many people. Instead, you've got a regular micro USB, though you will have MHL3 output, so you should be able to output some very high resolution content via that. You've also got dual microphones, and you have another microphone up at the top for stereo audio recording and noise cancellation as well. Infrared blaster, this thing's a television remote control, and a 3.5mm jack. Left hand side, volume rocker. And that's pretty much it for the sides. Now onto the back, and you've got that 16 megapixel rear facing camera, heart rate monitor, flash. That back is a almost faux leather backing in terms of the dappled texture, but you don't have any horrible stitching. So again, Samsung has listened and improved the design, which we're really happy about. Loudspeaker on the bottom left hand side, and removing the back cover illustrates you've got that 30 to 20 milliamp battery. Micro SIM slot, it's not a nano SIM slot, and a micro SD card slot. We're guessing you can buy a wireless charging case, gauging by the styling of the case, but this is not one of them. If we close all that up, and we can put that to one side as we take a look at the Huawei Ascend Mate 7. The Ascend Mate 7 is simpler in its styling. You don't have any S Pen stowed away, you don't have any removable back covers, or you don't have any buttons even. All the buttons are indeed on screen. That's three on-screen buttons below. On the front though, you do have a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, in-call speaker, right-hand side volume rocker and power button. Down at the base, micro USB connector and one microphone. Left-hand side, you have two slots. These eject via a pin, and one has a micro or SIM slot and one has a micro SD card slot. The micro SD card slot can double up as a nano SIM slot in certain regions. Sadly though, the UK is not one of them. Up at the top is a 3.5mm jack and another microphone, stereo audio recording, and that's a fingerprint scanner around the back. This is a tap fingerprint scanner, so if we power it off and we position our finger over it, it will actually just power the phone on with a tap of our finger rather than a long press or a swipe or powering it on and then fingerprint scanning. It's the best the best Android fingerprint scanner we've used. It doesn't work as well as Touch ID on an iPhone, that has to be said, but it does work in a more enjoyable, easy to use and responsive way than a slide does. You can see a 13 megapixel rear facing camera and a flash as well. There's also that loudspeaker at the base, non-removable back cover as we said, but generally speaking we're quite happy with what Huawei's done here, if only it wasn't oh so slippery. Bringing both into frame, and we can talk about these screens. This is a real area the Note wins out. Not only is the Note's display significantly brighter, it's also way sharper. That quad HD resolution versus full HD resolution is just not even in the same league. If we pull up closer, it's worth noting the Huawei Ascend Mate 7 is perfectly sharp. We can see there's no real pixelation in sight. If we open up a folder, if you're reading, you're not going to have any issues with that whatsoever. The Samsung Galaxy Note 4 really does manage to nail clarity though, as well as punch, something that the Huawei Ascend Mate 7 doesn't have quite as much of. If we want numbers, Full HD resolution leaves you with a pixel density spread across 6 inches of 367 pixels per inch. This is by contrast to 515 pixels per inch. Unless you're an eagle eyes like we said, you may well not notice the difference, but the chances are you will, because the Note just looks so good. The deep blacks on the Note are also very impressive, although for an IPS LCD display, the Ascend Mate 7 is a good performer. The user interfaces are also very different. Samsung's TouchWiz versus Huawei's Emotion UI. If we start off with TouchWiz, we can see you've got home screens. You pinch out, you have an overview of home screens. If we take a look at the Huawei pinch out, you have an overview of home screens, and you've got home screens. So that's a very similar element. And it's not really Huawei copying Samsung as much as both adopting Google's styling for their Android experience. If we're to take a look at where they vary though, you can see to the left hand side of all your home screens is Flipboard Briefing. This is on the Samsung. This is a news aggregator. They've kind of ditched going with your social media content a little bit. It's much more responsive than My Magazine UX, and it looks a lot nicer as well. Nice and color coded, as you can see. You can turn that off very easily, and that's in the settings, and you can also change your transition effect as well. That's pretty much the extent of customizing things like transitions and themes though. Samsung doesn't give you a huge amount of control over that. You can see though, the experience is still very customized. You can organize your applications tray into folders and shortcuts, and as you can see, we love to take full advantage of that fact. Jumping out, we can pull down from the top. One finger reveals notifications and all your quick toggles, and 2-finger pull down reveals just those quick toggles, which you can then customize. So that's a key user interface experience. Samsung enriches it with a lot of their own applications. Many people will call this bloatware. Some of them very cool. S Note, handy, very handy, takes full advantage of that S Pen. You can also see when you do pull out the S Pen, you have the option to action memo, S command, smart select, image clip, and screen write. You can also even do cool stuff like take a picture of a logo and it will translate that logo into an S Note, and that S Note will be editable, so it'll actually make the logo layers editable, something that I've only really been able to do prior in applications like Illustrator. That heart rate monitor around the back also takes advantage of the S Health application. So some cool stuff. You also have Samsung's Galaxy gifts on board, which give you a few free things out of the box, like free Deezer subscription and a free book from Kindle every month. Bringing the Huawei Ascend Mate 7 into frame, and we can swipe through and you can see your home screens. There is no applications tray on here. There is also no flipboard element, so this is a much simpler UI overall. 1-finger pull down, and you can see depending on where you actually swipe from, on the left hand side you'll pull down notifications, on the right right hand side, you'll see your pull down shortcuts. If we do 2-finger pull down, that doesn't make a bit of difference. We can just swipe between the elements right there. If we pinch out, you can also see here you can control your wallpapers, your widgets, your transitions, and indeed your layouts. What's really nice about this is you can have a 4x5, 5x4, or 5x5 grid to control how densely packed your home screens are. So that's a nice little bit of control that Huawei gives you. As far as the transitions go, they can just get a little bit crazy right there. We can have a windmill transition, for example, where we swipe through, squeeze transition, box transition. We tend to be a little bit more old school, so we tend to leave it on default, but you can see what Huawei is doing, giving you maximum control. There are also a shed load of themes that you can very easily swap out. So we can swap out to an unofficial Zelda theme, for example, and in a matter of seconds, we have a completely revised user interface. Give it a second to refresh and you can see that didn't take too long at all, and everything looks totally different and a lot more fun. As you can see, Huawei's gone to town on their new user interface. We much prefer it over its predecessor. There are a few niggles. For example, if you pull down the notifications tray and you've got Spotify running, the buttons appear transparent, and that's because you've got that white background and it's not written in accordance with stock Android. But for those few niggles, this amount of personalization, many people will be able to put up with that. You do also have two very good cameras on here. From our first impression, the Note is a better performer with its optical image stabilization and its higher resolution. Although both will record full HD video, the Note will also record 4K video as well. What you can also expect in the multimedia fronts are two brilliant screens for watching stuff. And it's really going to be dependent on whether you want more punchy colors and deeper blacks or a bigger screen experience as to which one you prefer. But they are very comparable. When watching movies and looking at pictures, for example, that extra little bit of sharpness that you get on the Note 4 won't matter as much as it would if you were, say, reading, for example. As far as the power under the hood goes, the processors are very different. Quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 805 processor clocked at 2.7 gigahertz with 3 gig of RAM. This is an absolute powerhouse if ever there was one. Indeed, the Note 4 benchmarks better than pretty much anything out there right now. We can quickly whack open Antutu and you can see we did a bunch of benchmarks, but Antutu seems to be the one that most people can read into easily, and that ranked better than the HTC One M8T, for example, as you can see. If we do exactly the same on the Ascend Mate 7 with its octa-core Kirin processor, we have the 2GB variant. This is available with 3GB as well. We can open up Tools, swipe across to Antutu, and give it a second to load. The 3GB variant has 32 gig of internal memory, and you can see not too shabby at all, not much worse, but it is definitely inferior in terms of its benchmarking performance to the Note 4. One thing that it does do better, however, is last. The battery inside here is stupendous. It's a 4,100 milliamp battery by contrast to a 3,220 milliamp battery. As far as connections go, they're actually going to be very comparable. You've got 3G, you've got 4G, Cat 6 LTE to be precise. In addition to that, you have NFC, Bluetooth 4.0, Wi-Fi Direct, etc. So everything you're really going to want from your smartphone is going to be in all of these. The Ascend Mate 7 will come in at a lot less money, but we'd actually stump up for the more expensive variant, which has 32 gig of internal memory. If you like gaming, these will both be able to perform very well as gaming devices. And indeed, as a lot of games need to be installed inside your smartphone, we'd suggest going for the larger capacity. Expandable, both of them by micro SD card. There isn't really much left to say. We think they're two of the best phablets out there. If you want an all-metal device that comes in for less money, gives you a little bit more screen and screen to bezel ratio as well, then the Ascend Mate 7 may well be for you. It also makes for one mean Wi-Fi hotspot. Leave the screen off on this, leave it tethering with that Cat 4 LTE. If you're in the UK and you have an EE contract on 4G, then it will be ideal for you, for example. then this could well be the winner. If we take out our S Pen, anyone who wants pen input on a phone, this has just made your whole life easier. There is no other phone that can come close to this as far as applications like Sketchbook Pro, Photoshop, Touch goes, and of course S Note as well. Stowing the S Pen though, it isn't all about the S Pen. This also has the highest resolution AMOLED screen for incredible contrast. You've also got beautiful colors on here and nice deep black. Samsung's tapered the vibrancy of those colors, so while they are punchy, you can customize them and they also do look realistic as well. In addition to that, it's probably a more manageable size. It feels more manageable in the hand, and it does actually feel more premium in spite of that plastic backing. Definitely the best that we've seen from Samsung today, along with the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. Hopefully you've enjoyed. If you have, make sure you click the like button. If you like BTech in general, click subscribe. And of course, if you've got any questions about the Huawei Ascend Mate 7 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, fire them in the comments section below. Thanks for watching.